The day I became $50 million richer was the day I walked in on my husband having sex with his business partner on his office conference table. I'm Naomi, and I need to tell you this story because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the person sleeping next to me for 5 years. That Tuesday started like a miracle. I was home with Ivy, our 3-year-old, playing with her dolls on the living room floor of our modest Chicago apartment, when my phone rang. It was a lawyer with a Swiss accent telling me my Uncle Charles, a man I'd met maybe twice in my entire life, had passed away and left me his entire estate. $50 million. I actually laughed out loud because it sounded like a scam, but it wasn't. The documents were real. The money was real. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Ivy looked up at me with those big, curious eyes, asking why Mommy was crying. I wasn't sure if they were happy tears or shock tears or what is even happening right now tears. Probably all of them at once. My first instinct, my only instinct, was to tell Tyler, my husband. The man I'd given up my graduate school dreams for so he could build his real estate career. The man I'd worked as a secretary for 3 years to support while he got his certifications and made his connections. He had his own brokerage now, finally successful, finally stable. And I thought we were finally going to have everything we'd worked for together. I strapped Ivy into her car seat and drove straight to his office downtown, my heart pounding the entire way. I kept imagining his face when I told him, the shock, the joy, the relief. I pictured us planning our future right there in his office, the house we'd buy, the vacations we'd take, maybe even another baby. The security Ivy would have. Everything we'd ever dreamed about was suddenly possible. I got to his building around 3 p.m. and told the receptionist I wanted to surprise him. She gave me this strange look, almost uncomfortable, but she let me go up anyway. I should have noticed that look. I should have paid attention to the hesitation in her voice. But I was too excited, too wrapped up in my own happiness to see what was right in front of me. I held Ivy's hand as we walked down the hall toward Tyler's office. His door was slightly open, which was weird because he usually kept it closed during client meetings. And then I heard it. Sounds that made my stomach drop. Sounds that didn't belong in an office at 3 p.m. Sounds I recognized because I'd made them with my husband in our bedroom. I stopped breathing. Literally forgot how to pull air into my lungs. I moved closer to the door, still holding Ivy's tiny hand, and looked through the gap. And there he was. Tyler. My husband. The father of my child. On top of Monica, his business partner, on the conference table where we'd had our company Christmas party last year. The same Monica who came to our apartment for dinner. The same Monica who'd held Ivy on her lap and called her, my little sweetheart. Ivy's voice cut through the moment like a knife. "Mommy, where's Daddy?" she said, loud enough that both of them heard. Tyler's head snapped toward the door. Our eyes met, and I watched my entire world collapse in the span of a single second. This is a long and painful story, but I need to tell someone what really happened. How the best day of my life turned into the worst. How I discovered that the man I trusted with everything had been planning to destroy me all along. If you want to hear how it ends, and trust me, you'll want to know. Make sure you're following along here so you don't miss what comes next. The days after catching Tyler were a blur of tears, rage, and this hollow numbness that settled in my chest like concrete. I stayed at my parents' house in Cleveland with Ivy, sleeping in my childhood bedroom with my daughter curled up next to me every night. She kept asking when we were going home, when she'd see Daddy, and I had no idea what to tell her. Tyler called 47 times that first night. 47. I know because I counted every single one before I finally blocked his number. He sent texts that swung wildly between desperate apologies and angry accusations, like I was somehow the villain in this scenario for not giving him a chance to explain, as if there was an explanation for what I saw that would make it okay. My mom held Ivy while I broke down at the kitchen table that first night. My dad just sat there with his hands clenched into fists, looking like he wanted to drive back to Chicago and do something that would land him in jail. I told them everything. The lawyer's call, the inheritance, how I'd been racing to Tyler's office to share the most incredible news of our lives, how I'd found him instead destroying everything we'd built. What I didn't tell them yet was the thought that kept circling my brain like a vulture. If I hadn't gotten that call, If I hadn't gone to his office at that exact moment, would I have ever known? How long would he have kept lying to me? How long had he already been lying? On day 3, Tyler showed up at my parents' house. I watched him through the window as he got out of his car, and I barely recognized him. He looked terrible. Unshaven, rumpled, desperate. Part of me felt a sick satisfaction seeing him that way. The other part, the part that had loved him for 7 years, felt something that scared me more than anger. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. My dad answered the door and told him to leave. But I came down the stairs and said I'd talk to him. Just once. Just to hear what excuse he'd managed to convince himself would work. We stood on the porch while my mom kept Ivy inside, distracted with cartoons. Tyler started talking immediately, words tumbling out like if he said them fast enough, they'd somehow rewrite what I'd seen. It was a mistake, he said. He was stressed about a big deal falling through. Monica had been having problems with her boyfriend. They'd both been drinking after work. It just happened. One time? A terrible, stupid mistake that meant nothing. I just stared at him. His lies were so practiced, so smooth, that I realized something chilling. This wasn't the first time he'd lied to me. This was just the first time I'd caught him. Then he grabbed my hand and his voice changed, got more desperate. Naomi, please, we can fix this. We have Ivy to think about. We have our whole future. We can go to counseling. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't throw away everything we've built. And that's when I said it. The words I'd been holding back just to see what he'd do, how he'd react. I came to tell you that I inherited $50 million. I was going to surprise you. I wanted us to plan our new life together. I watched his face change. Horror flashed across it first, the realization that his timing couldn't have been worse. Then something else appeared, something that made my blood run cold. His eyes got sharp, calculating. Even in his desperation, even drowning in his own guilt, I could see his brain working through the implications. The money, what it meant, what he could get from it. 50 million? He repeated, and I heard the shift in his voice. Jesus, Naomi, that changes everything. We need to talk about this. We need to figure out how. I cut him off. The only thing we need to figure out is custody arrangements. You'll be getting divorce papers tomorrow. He actually tried to argue. Started saying we needed to be smart about this, think about the financial implications, make sure everything was handled properly. Like I was the one who needed to be careful. Like he was trying to protect me instead of himself. I told him to leave. He stood there for another minute, and I could see him cycling through emotions. Panic, rage, fear. Finally, he walked back to his car, but not before turning around one more time and saying he'd fight for our marriage, that I'd regret this when I calmed down and thought clearly. I went back inside and immediately called the best divorce attorney in Illinois that I could find. Her name was Patricia Chen, and her reputation was legendary. She listened to my story for 20 minutes without interrupting, and when I finished, she said something that made my stomach drop. We need to move fast. If he's thinking like I think he's thinking, he's already calling his own lawyer. That night, lying in my childhood bed with Ivy snoring softly beside me, I couldn't sleep. Something Tyler had said kept replaying in my mind. We need to figure out how to handle this properly. Not, I'm sorry, not, I love you, not, I'll do anything to save our family. He was already strategizing, already planning, and that's when a terrifying thought hit me. What if Tyler's mistake wasn't sleeping with Monica? What if his mistake was getting caught before he was ready? I grabbed my phone and sent Patricia an email at 2 a.m. I need you to investigate everything. His business, his accounts, all of it. I think this goes deeper than I realized. She responded in 5 minutes. I was hoping you'd say that. I'll have my forensic accountant start in the morning. I had no idea what we were about to find, but somewhere deep in my gut, I knew that the man crying on my parents' porch wasn't devastated about losing his wife. He was devastated about losing his payday. Patricia moved faster than I thought possible. Within a week, her team had subpoenaed Tyler's business records, bank statements, and email accounts as part of the divorce discovery process. I was still at my parents' house, trying to keep some sense of normalcy for Ivy, while my entire world was being dissected by lawyers and accountants. The first call came on a Thursday morning. I was making Ivy breakfast when my phone rang, and Patricia's voice had this edge to it that made my hands go cold. Naomi, I need you to sit down for this conversation, she said. I sent Ivy to play in the living room with my mom and locked myself in the bathroom. My heart was already racing before Patricia said another word. We found the affair evidence first, she started. Email chains between Tyler and Monica going back 2 years. Hotel receipts, text messages. Naomi, I'm sorry, but this wasn't a one-time mistake. They've been involved since about 6 months after Monica joined his brokerage as a partner. 2 years. I gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles went white. 2 years of family dinners with Monica sitting across from me. 2 years of her playing with Ivy. 2 years of me being the fool who trusted both of them completely. But Patricia wasn't finished. There's more. Monica is pregnant. 5 months. We found medical records in her email that Tyler had access to. They've been planning for this baby, Naomi. There are emails discussing names, nursery colors. She sent him ultrasound photos. The bathroom felt like it was spinning. I slid down to sit on the floor, my back against the door. He has a baby coming with her? Had, Patricia corrected. The affair fell apart after you caught them. We're monitoring their communications as part of Discovery, and it's gotten ugly between them. But yes, she's still pregnant. Due in February. I couldn't breathe. While I was home taking care of his daughter, sacrificing my own career and education, he was building a secret life with someone else, planning a whole separate future. There's something else, Patricia continued, and her tone got even more serious. This is the part you really need to hear. My forensic accountant found irregularities in the brokerage accounts. Tyler's been moving money, large amounts, into offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. What? I whispered. He's been siphoning profits from the business for the past year. Not enough to raise red flags with Monica, but enough that we're talking about $700,000 hidden in accounts that aren't disclosed anywhere in his financial statements. Naomi, he was preparing for a divorce. He was hiding assets so you'd get less when he eventually left you. The words hit me like physical blows. He was planning to leave me. We found a draft email in his deleted folder from 6 weeks ago. He never sent it, but he wrote it to Monica, telling her he was going to ask you for a divorce after the holidays because he didn't want to ruin Ivy's Christmas. He said he was just waiting for the right moment, making sure all his financial arrangements were in place first. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. My mother would hear, and Ivy would get scared. But inside, I was shattering into a million pieces. Tyler hadn't made a mistake. Tyler had been actively planning to destroy me, to take everything he could, hide everything else, and leave me with a broken marriage and barely enough to survive on. The only thing that stopped him was me walking into his office at exactly the wrong, or exactly the right moment. There's one more thing, Patricia said quietly. We found emails between Tyler and Monica looking at houses in Lake Forest, 3-bedroom places with good school districts. They were planning to move in together, Naomi. They were planning their life after he left you. I don't remember ending the call. I just remember sitting on that bathroom floor, staring at the tiles my dad had installed when I was 12, and feeling something shift inside me. The grief started turning into something sharper, harder. That afternoon, I asked Patricia to dig deeper into everything. I wanted to know every lie, every secret, every dollar he'd hidden. I wasn't going to just walk away from this marriage. I was going to burn it to the ground and make sure Tyler understood exactly what he'd lost. Over the next 2 weeks, more evidence piled up. Credit card statements showing jewelry purchases I'd never received. Monica had. Restaurant receipts from places Tyler told me were business dinners. They were dates. There was even a weekend trip to Napa that he'd told me was a real estate conference. The conference existed, but Monica's flight records showed she was there too, staying at the same hotel. My parents watched me go through the documents every night after Ivy went to bed. My dad kept asking if I was okay, and I kept lying and saying yes. But I wasn't okay. I was furious. I was humiliated. And I was determined. The inheritance money had been transferred to my personal account by then. $50 million that Tyler had known about for 3 weeks now. Patricia told me he'd already filed a motion claiming he deserved a portion of it as marital property, arguing that his emotional support during our marriage entitled him to share in my windfall. The audacity almost made me laugh. Almost. But then Patricia sent me one more document late one night. An email Tyler had sent to Monica just 2 days after I'd caught them, when he was still trying to salvage their relationship. In it, he wrote, Once the dust settles and I get what I'm owed from the divorce, we can still make this work. With her inheritance in play, I could walk away with enough to set us both up for life. I just need to play this smart. I read that line 5 times. Get what I'm owed. Like he deserved my inheritance. Like he deserved anything from me after what he'd done. That's when I realized something that changed everything. Tyler wasn't sorry about the affair. He was sorry he'd gotten caught before he could execute his plan perfectly. And now he was going to try to use the legal system to take from me what he couldn't steal in secret. I called Patricia at midnight. She answered on the first ring like she'd been expecting it. I want to destroy him, I said, legally, completely. I want him to lose everything. Can we do that? There was a pause, then Patricia's voice came back calm and cold. Naomi, with what we've found, yes, we absolutely can. Patricia scheduled our first official divorce mediation meeting for early December. 3 months had passed since I'd caught Tyler, and we'd been communicating only through lawyers. He'd moved out of our apartment, which I learned he'd actually moved into Monica's place in Lincoln Park before she kicked him out 2 weeks later when their relationship imploded. Now he was renting some bachelor pad in River North, playing the victim to anyone who'd listen. I'd moved back to Chicago by then, into a temporary furnished apartment in Evanston with Ivy. I needed to be close for the legal proceedings, and honestly, I needed to face this head-on instead of hiding at my parents' house. Ivy had started asking harder questions about why Daddy didn't live with us anymore, and I was doing my best to keep things normal for her while my lawyers built a case that would eviscerate her father. The mediation was held at a conference room in a neutral law office downtown. Patricia warned me that Tyler would try to seem remorseful, that he'd put on a show of being the apologetic husband who made one terrible mistake. She told me to stay calm, say as little as possible, and let her do the talking. But she also told me something else. Watch him carefully. Men like Tyler, when they think they're in control of the narrative, they get cocky. They slip up. Let him think you're still the same woman he married. Soft, trusting, a little naive. It'll make him careless. So that's exactly what I did. Tyler arrived 5 minutes late, which felt like a power move. He was dressed in his best suit, hair perfectly styled, looking like he'd just stepped out of a business meeting. His lawyer was this slick guy named Richard Donovan, who had a reputation for being aggressive in divorce cases. They sat across from Patricia and me, and I forced myself to meet Tyler's eyes. He gave me this sad, puppy dog look that probably worked on other women. Naomi, he said softly, like we were alone. I'm glad we can finally talk face to face. I've missed you. I've missed Ivy. Patricia put her hand on my arm, a subtle reminder not to engage. But I nodded slightly, like his words affected me, like maybe part of me still cared. The mediation started with Richard laying out Tyler's position. He wanted joint custody of Ivy, 50-50. He wanted half of all marital assets accumulated during the marriage. And then he said it, the thing that made my blood boil, but I kept my face neutral. Given that Mrs. Harper's inheritance was received during the marriage, and considering my client's contributions to the household and emotional support throughout their union, we believe a portion of said inheritance should be considered marital property. We're proposing 20%, or $10 million, be allocated to Mr. Harper. $10 million for cheating on me with his business partner for 2 years while planning to leave me with nothing. Patricia didn't even blink. That's an interesting position, Mr. Donovan. Unfortunately for your client, Illinois law is very clear that inheritances received by one spouse are separate property, not marital assets, but we can discuss that further. First, let's talk about the offshore accounts your client failed to disclose. I watched Tyler's face. For just a second, his mask slipped. His eyes went sharp, calculating. Then he recovered and looked confused. Offshore accounts? I don't know what you're talking about. Patricia slid a folder across the table. Bank records from 3 accounts in the Cayman Islands, totaling $743,000. All deposits made from your brokerage over the past 14 months. Would you like to explain those? Richard grabbed the folder and started flipping through it, his face getting red. Tyler sat perfectly still, but I could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. He was furious that we'd found them, but he was trying to play it cool. Those are business accounts, Tyler said smoothly. Completely legitimate for international clients and investments. Really? Patricia said. Because we also have emails between you and Monica where you explicitly discuss hiding money from your wife. Would you like me to read them aloud, or should we move on?" The room went silent. Tyler stared at Patricia like he wanted to strangle her, but then he did something that surprised me. He turned to me directly, ignoring the lawyers completely. "Naomi, listen to me," he said, and his voice was soft, pleading. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but we had something real, didn't we? 7 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter together. Doesn't that count for something? Don't I deserve at least a chance to make this right? To be treated fairly?" And that's when he made his mistake. He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing something intimate. "You know I supported you when times were tough. I built a business so we could have a good life. And yeah, I made mistakes with the money, I was scared about our future, but I was trying to protect us. Protect Ivy. You have $50 million now, Naomi. Would it really hurt you to help me out? To make sure Ivy's father isn't destroyed? Think about what's best for her." He was using our daughter, using my love for her as leverage to manipulate me into giving him money. But what he didn't realize was that he'd just given me something much more valuable. He'd admitted on the record with lawyers present that he'd hidden money because he was scared about our future. Not our business, not investments, our future, as in our marriage ending. Patricia caught it too. I saw her write something down, her face carefully neutral. "I think we're done here for today," Patricia said calmly. "We'll respond to your proposal in writing. But, Mr. Donovan, I'd advise your client to be forthcoming about all assets moving forward. Discovery is a wonderful thing." We left the mediation room, and I managed to hold it together until we got to Patricia's office down the street. Then I let out a breath I'd been holding for an hour. "He thinks I'm still the same person," I said. "He thinks he can manipulate me." Patricia smiled, and it was almost predatory. Good. Let him think that. Because what he just gave us is an admission that he hid assets in anticipation of divorce. That's dissipation of marital funds, and it's going to cost him dearly. Judges don't like liars, Naomi, especially liars who try to cheat their spouses and then ask for millions in inheritance money they have no legal right to. I drove home that night feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Powerful. Tyler thought he was playing chess while I was playing checkers. But he didn't know that I'd learned the rules of his game, and I was about to flip the entire board. 2 days later, Patricia called me with news that made everything click into place. "We got the phone records from Tyler's cell carrier," she said. "The night before you caught him, he had a 40-minute call with a divorce attorney. He called from his office at 9 p.m. Naomi, he was already planning to file. He was just waiting for the right moment. Your inheritance money landing before he could execute his plan wasn't bad timing for him. It was the worst timing possible." I sat down slowly on my couch, processing this. "He was going to leave me with nothing. He was going to try," Patricia corrected, "but he got greedy, and greedy people make mistakes. That phone call, that's going to show intent. Combined with the hidden money, the affair, and his attempts to claim your inheritance, we have everything we need." After we hung up, I looked at Ivy playing with her toys on the floor. She was singing to herself, completely oblivious to the war being fought over her future. Tyler had been willing to destroy her mother, to leave us with scraps, all while planning a new life with Monica and their baby. But his biggest mistake wasn't the affair. It wasn't even the hidden money. His biggest mistake was underestimating me. He thought I'd be too hurt, too broken, too dependent on him to fight back. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. The holidays were brutal. Ivy kept asking why Daddy wasn't coming for Christmas, and I had to explain in 3-year-old terms that Mommy and Daddy were having grown-up problems. Tyler's visitation rights had been temporarily suspended after Patricia filed an emergency motion citing his unstable living situation and the ongoing investigation into his finances. The judge agreed to supervised visits only 2 hours every Saturday at a family center. I watched through a one-way mirror the first time Tyler saw Ivy after our mediation. He brought her a stuffed animal and spent most of the 2 hours on his phone while she played alone. When the time was up, he kissed her forehead and left without looking back. Ivy asked the supervisor when Daddy was taking her home, and the woman had to gently explain that she was going back with Mommy today. That moment crystallized something for me. This wasn't just about the money or the affair anymore. This was about protecting my daughter from a man who saw her as a pawn in his game, rather than a person he was supposed to love. Patricia and I met twice a week through January to build our case. Her team had uncovered more than I'd imagined possible, and each discovery made me realize how deeply Tyler had betrayed me, and how long he'd been planning it. The forensic accountant, a sharp woman named Ruth, walked me through documents that made my head spin. Tyler had been inflating business expenses and pocketing the difference for over a year. He'd taken out a secret credit card in just his name and maxed it out on Monica. Jewelry, trips, even a deposit on an engagement ring he'd never given me. He'd forged my signature on a home equity line of credit application 6 months before I caught him, pulling $60,000 out of the apartment we owned together. Money I never saw. "Where did all that money go?" I asked Ruth, staring at the spreadsheets. "The offshore accounts mostly," she said, "but also cash withdrawals, large ones, 10, 15,000 at a time. He was building a nest egg to disappear with." Patricia leaned back in her chair. "The forgery is the real problem for him. That's not just marital misconduct, that's fraud. I've already notified the state attorney's office. They're reviewing it for potential criminal charges." I felt my stomach flip. Criminal charges. "Financial fraud is a felony in Illinois," Patricia explained. "If they prosecute and he's convicted, he could face jail time. But more importantly for us, it destroys any credibility he has in family court. A judge isn't going to give joint custody to a man facing felony fraud charges against his wife." That night, I lay awake thinking about Tyler potentially going to jail. A year ago, the thought would have devastated me. Now, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. He'd been willing to forge my signature and steal from me. He deserved whatever consequences came his way. But there was still something bothering me, a piece I couldn't figure out. I called Patricia the next morning. "Why Monica?" I asked. "I know why Tyler did what he did. He's selfish and greedy. But Monica had a successful career, her own money. Why would she risk everything for a married man?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "I've been wondering the same thing, so I had someone look into her background. Naomi, Monica's been through 2 previous relationships with married men. Both ended badly when the wives found out. There's a pattern here." "What kind of pattern?" "She targets successful men in committed relationships, gets involved with them professionally first, then personally. In both previous cases, the men were older, established, had assets. Monica isn't just a woman who happened to fall for your husband. She's a woman who sees opportunity and takes it." The realization made me feel sick. She saw Tyler as a mark, and when your inheritance came through, you became the obstacle to a much bigger payday than she'd anticipated. We found emails from her to Tyler after you caught them. She wasn't upset about losing him. She was upset about losing access to $50 million. I sat down, processing this. They deserved each other. "They did," Patricia agreed, "and now they've both lost everything. Monica's baby is due in 3 weeks, by the way. Tyler hasn't contacted her in 2 months, according to her phone records. She tried calling him 47 times in December. He blocked her number. 47 calls. The same number Tyler had called me that first night. The symmetry was almost poetic. By February, we had everything we needed for court. Patricia had built a case so airtight that Richard Donovan tried 3 times to negotiate a settlement. Each offer got progressively more desperate. Tyler would give up his claim to the inheritance if I agreed to joint custody. Then he'd accept supervised visitation if I gave him half the marital assets. Finally, he'd take 20% of the apartment equity if I just didn't pursue the fraud charges. Patricia rejected all of them. "We're not negotiating," she told me after the 3rd offer. "We're going to trial and we're going to win. Because here's what Tyler doesn't understand. Judges hate liars. They especially hate liars who steal from their spouses and then demand millions in inheritance money. He's going to walk away from this marriage with nothing but legal bills and possibly a criminal record." I asked her if she was sure, if going to trial was really the right move. She looked at me seriously. "Naomi, settlements are for when both sides have something to lose. Tyler has everything to lose. You have everything to gain. Why would we compromise?" She was right. But there was one more thing I needed to know, one more piece of Tyler's puzzle I hadn't figured out yet. "What was he planning to do with all that hidden money?" I asked. $700,000 offshore, plus whatever cash he pulled out. That's a lot for just starting over with Monica. Patricia pulled out another file. Ruth found something interesting. Tyler had been researching countries with no extradition treaties to the United States. He'd also been looking at international schools. And he'd contacted a lawyer in Costa Rica about purchasing property there. My blood went cold. He was planning to leave the country? We think so. The timeline matches up with when he was going to ask you for divorce. He'd file papers, drag out the proceedings as long as possible while continuing to hide assets. And then, once the divorce was finalized and he'd minimized what you'd get, he'd disappear to Costa Rica with Monica and their baby. You'd never see a penny of what he owed you, and Ivy would barely see her father. I couldn't breathe. The calculation, the coldness of it. He'd been willing to abandon his daughter, to leave the country, all to keep money he'd stolen from me. But he made one critical error, Patricia continued. He didn't expect you to fight back. He thought you'd be too hurt, too overwhelmed, too dependent on him to hire a lawyer like me. He thought he could bully you into a quick divorce and walk away with whatever he could grab. Your inheritance just upped the stakes, but his plan was always to destroy you financially and disappear. I thought about that for a long time. About the man I'd married, the man I'd supported, the man I'd trusted with my entire future. That man had never really existed. I'd been married to a lie for 7 years. But I'd also learned something about myself in these past few months. I was stronger than Tyler had ever given me credit for. I was smarter than he'd assumed. And I was about to prove it in court. The trial was scheduled for March. 2 weeks away, Patricia had witnesses lined up. The forensic accountant, Tyler's former business associates, who'd testify about suspicious financial practices, even the receptionist from his office who'd seen Monica coming and going at odd hours. We had documents, emails, bank records, phone logs. We had everything. Tyler had excuses, lies, and a lawyer who looked more nervous every time we walked into a courtroom. The night before the trial started, I took Ivy to dinner at her favorite pizza place. She was happy, adjusted, doing well in her new preschool. She barely mentioned Tyler anymore, and when she did, it was always brief. Daddy brought me a toy. Daddy was on his phone. Never, "I miss Daddy," or "When is Daddy coming home?" She'd already figured out what I'd taken years to learn. Tyler wasn't someone you could count on. As I tucked her into bed that night, she looked up at me with those big eyes and said, "Mommy, are you sad?" "No, baby," I told her honestly. "I'm not sad anymore." "Good," she said, snuggling into her pillow. "I like it when you smile." And I realized that I had been smiling more lately. Despite everything, despite the pain and the betrayal and the anger, I was genuinely happier now than I'd been in years. Because I wasn't living a lie anymore. I wasn't pretending my marriage was fine while my husband plotted against me. The truth had set me free. And tomorrow, it was going to set the record straight. The courthouse in downtown Chicago was intimidating. All marble columns and echo-filled hallways that made every footstep sound like a judgment. Patricia met me outside courtroom 4C on a cold Monday morning in March, carrying 2 briefcases full of evidence that would dismantle Tyler's life piece by piece. "Remember what we talked about?" she said calmly. "Stay composed. Don't let him get a reaction out of you. The judge needs to see you as the rational, victimized party and Tyler as the calculating liar he is." I nodded, but my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anticipation. This was it, the moment where everything Tyler had done would be exposed in open court. Tyler arrived with Richard 15 minutes later. He looked thinner than I remembered, shadows under his eyes like he hadn't been sleeping. Good. He should be losing sleep. When our eyes met across the hallway, he quickly looked away. That told me everything I needed to know about his confidence level going into this trial. The first 2 days were procedural. Jury selection, opening statements, establishing the basic facts of our marriage. Patricia painted a picture of a woman who'd sacrificed everything for her husband's success, only to discover he'd been systematically betraying and robbing her for years. Richard tried to paint Tyler as a flawed but loving husband who'd made mistakes but deserved compassion and a fair share of marital assets. The jury, 8 women and 4 men, looked skeptical of Richard's version from the start. Day 3 was when Ruth took the stand. She walked the jury through every offshore account, every forged signature, every suspicious withdrawal. She had charts and timelines projected on screens showing exactly when Tyler had started hiding money and how it correlated with his affair beginning. "In your professional opinion," Patricia asked her, "was Mr. Harper hiding assets in anticipation of divorce?" "Absolutely," Ruth said without hesitation. "The pattern is textbook. He began moving money offshore 14 months ago. That's also when his personal expenses increased dramatically. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry purchases. He was funding an affair while simultaneously hiding marital assets. This wasn't poor financial planning. This was deliberate fraud." I watched Tyler while Ruth testified. He kept his face neutral, but his leg bounced under the table. Nervous energy he couldn't control. Richard tried to discredit Ruth on cross-examination, suggesting her analysis was biased because I was paying her. She shut him down coldly. "I've been a forensic accountant for 23 years, Mr. Donovan. I've testified in over 200 divorce cases for both husbands and wives. The numbers don't lie. Regardless of who writes my paycheck, your client committed financial fraud. That's not an opinion. It's a fact supported by documentation." Day 4 brought the most damaging testimony yet. Patricia called Jessica, the receptionist from Tyler's office. She was a young woman, maybe 25, who looked nervous but determined. "Ms. Torres," Patricia began, "how long did you work at Harper Realty?" 3 years, Jessica said. "I was the front desk receptionist and office coordinator. During that time, did you ever notice anything unusual about Mr. Harper's relationship with his business partner, Monica Reeves?" Jessica nodded. "Yes, they were always very close. Too close for just business partners. She'd come in early before anyone else arrived, and I'd see them in his office with the door closed. Sometimes I'd hear them laughing. Once I walked in to drop off mail, and they jumped apart really fast." "When did this behavior start?" "About 2 years ago, maybe a little more, right after Monica joined as a partner." Patricia pulled up several documents on the screen. "Do you recognize these?" "Those are hotel confirmations. Mr. Harper asked me to book hotel rooms several times for what he said were business trips. But when I'd book 2 rooms like he asked, he'd call me later and tell me to cancel one. He said it was to save money on the company budget." "Did you find that unusual?" "Very. We weren't hurting for money. And usually when he traveled with Monica for real estate conferences, they wanted separate rooms. These cancellations only happened on trips that weren't officially on the company calendar." Richard objected, claiming speculation, but the judge allowed the testimony. The damage was done. The jury now knew Tyler had been booking hotel rooms under the guise of business while secretly sharing them with Monica. But the real bombshell came during Jessica's cross-examination. Richard was trying to rattle her, suggesting she was just a disgruntled employee, when she said something that made the entire courtroom go silent. "I'm not disgruntled," Jessica said firmly. "I quit because of what Mr. Harper did. Not just to his wife, but to Monica, too." Richard froze. "What do you mean, what he did to Ms. Reeves?" Jessica looked at Tyler directly. "After Mrs. Harper caught them, Monica was devastated. She kept calling the office, crying, asking to talk to him. Mr. Harper told me to tell her he wasn't available, every single time. Then she came to the office when she was about 7 months pregnant, and he had security escort her out. I heard him tell her that the baby wasn't his problem anymore, and she should stop harassing him at work." The jury looked horrified. Even some of the men were shaking their heads. "He told a pregnant woman, pregnant with his child, that she wasn't his problem?" Patricia asked on redirect, seizing the opportunity. "Yes," Jessica confirmed. "She was crying so hard she could barely stand. I felt terrible for her. Whatever she'd done, she didn't deserve that." I watched Tyler's face turn red. Richard looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. This wasn't just about financial fraud anymore. The jury now saw Tyler as a man who destroyed 2 women and abandoned his own unborn child. That evening, Patricia and I reviewed the next day's strategy in her office. "Tomorrow we're calling the real estate agent who showed Tyler and Monica houses in Lake Forest," she said. "She'll testify that they were looking at homes as a couple, that Tyler specifically asked about properties that would be good for raising children. Then we have Tyler's financial advisor, who'll testify that Tyler asked about hiding assets during divorce." "Will the advisor really say that?" I asked. "He's been subpoenaed. He has to tell the truth or commit perjury." And Patricia smiled slightly. "He's already given a deposition where he admitted Tyler asked him how to protect assets from a potential future divorce about 18 months ago, long before you caught them." 18 months. Tyler had been planning this for a year and a half. That night I couldn't sleep thinking about everything that had come out in court. But one thing kept bothering me. I texted Patricia at midnight. Why would Tyler's financial advisor tell the truth? Doesn't that hurt his business? She responded immediately. He's trying to save his license. The State Financial Regulatory Board is investigating him for helping Tyler hide money. Testifying against Tyler is his way of showing cooperation. Everyone's abandoning the sinking ship. The next morning, day 5 of the trial, the real estate agent testified exactly as Patricia promised. She had emails, text messages, showing notes where Tyler and Monica had discussed which house had the best school district, which one had enough space for the new baby and Ivy on weekends. Tyler had been planning to bring my daughter into his new home with Monica and their baby, like we were just interchangeable pieces in his perfect life plan. The financial advisor was even worse. He was a nervous man in his 50s who clearly regretted ever taking Tyler as a client. Mr. Harper came to me in September 2 years ago, he testified. He said he was concerned about protecting his assets because his marriage was potentially unstable. Well, he asked me about offshore accounts, about moving money in ways that wouldn't be easily traced. I advised him that hiding marital assets was illegal, but he insisted he was just being cautious. Did he open offshore accounts based on your advice? Patricia asked. Not through me. I refused to help him do anything illegal. But he clearly found someone who would. After the advisor stepped down, Patricia turned to me during a recess. We're winning. The jury hates him. Even the judge looks disgusted every time Tyler's lawyer speaks. But there's one more thing we need to do. What? Put you on the stand. Let them hear your story directly. Let them see who Tyler destroyed. My stomach dropped. I have to testify? You don't have to, Patricia said carefully. We have enough evidence to win without it. But if you want to ensure Tyler walks away with absolutely nothing, if you want the jury to really understand what he did to you, then yes, you should testify. I thought about Ivy, about the life I'd given up to support Tyler's dreams, about the lies I'd believed and the trust I'd given a man who'd spent years plotting against me. Okay, I said. I'll do it. Patricia squeezed my hand. Good, because there's one more thing the jury needs to know. Something we've been holding back. What? She pulled out a document I'd never seen before. We found out what Tyler was really planning to do with Monica in Costa Rica. He wasn't just running away with hidden money. He'd been corresponding with a man who helps wealthy Americans disappear. Fake identities, untraceable bank accounts, the whole thing. Tyler wasn't planning to just divorce you and start over. He was planning to completely vanish, making it impossible for you to ever collect child support or find him if you discovered the fraud. I stared at the document, my hands trembling. He was going to disappear? What about Ivy? He'd abandoned her long before he'd physically leave. This was never about starting a new life. This was about stealing everything he could and erasing himself so you couldn't fight back. That night, preparing for my testimony, I realized something that made everything fall into place. Tyler's mistake wasn't getting caught with Monica. His mistake was believing I'd never be strong enough to fight him. He'd counted on me being too broken, too dependent, too trusting to see him for what he really was. But he'd miscalculated. And tomorrow, I was going to tell my story, the whole truth, and watch his entire world burn. I wore a simple navy dress the day I testified. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed $50 million inheritance. Patricia had coached me. Look approachable, sympathetic, like the devoted wife and mother I'd been before Tyler destroyed everything. The courtroom was packed. Word had gotten out about the case. The cheating husband, the hidden millions, the betrayed wife who'd inherited a fortune. Local news reporters sat in the back row, notebooks ready. Patricia called me to the stand mid-morning. My hands shook as I was sworn in. But once I sat down and saw Tyler avoiding my eyes, something steadied inside me. This was my moment, my truth. Patricia started gently, walking me through our marriage. How we met in college, how I'd supported him financially while he built his career, how I'd put my own graduate degree on hold to be a stay-at-home mom while he grew the business. Did you know Mr. Harper was having an affair? Patricia asked. No, I said, my voice stronger than I expected. I trusted him completely. I had no reason not to. He was my husband, the father of my child. I believed we were building a life together. Tell the jury about the day you discovered the affair. I took a breath and looked at the jury. 8 faces watching me with varying degrees of sympathy and curiosity. I got a call from a lawyer in Switzerland, I began. My uncle had died and left me his entire estate. $50 million. I was in shock. I barely knew this uncle, hadn't seen him since I was a teenager. But my first thought, my only thought, was to share the news with Tyler. I wanted to see his face when I told him. I wanted us to be happy together. I saw one of the female jurors wipe her eye. I got our daughter and drove straight to his office. I didn't call ahead because I wanted it to be a surprise. When I got to his floor, I heard sounds coming from his office. I looked through the door and saw him with Monica, his business partner, on the conference table. The courtroom was silent, except for someone shifting in their seat. Our 3-year-old daughter was with me. She asked where Daddy was, and that's when they heard us. Tyler looked at me, and I knew in that moment that my marriage was over, that everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. Patricia let that sit for a moment before continuing. What happened after you left his office? I went to my parents' house. Tyler showed up that night, apologizing, saying it was a mistake. I told him I'd come to share the news about the inheritance, that I'd wanted us to plan our future together. The look on his face when I mentioned the money, it wasn't guilt anymore. It was calculation, like he was already figuring out how much he could get. Did Mr. Harper ever explain why he had the affair? He said he was stressed, that it just happened, that it didn't mean anything. I looked at Tyler directly for the first time. He was staring at the table. But that was another lie. We found out later it had been going on for 2 years, that Monica was pregnant, that they'd been planning a life together. Patricia pulled up documents on the screen. Bank statements, emails, hotel receipts. Mrs. Harper, did you know your husband was hiding money from you? No, I had no idea. We had joint accounts, or so I thought. I trusted him to handle our finances while I took care of our daughter and our home. I didn't know he'd opened secret accounts, that he'd forged my signature to take out loans against our apartment, that he was planning to leave me with nothing. How did that make you feel when you discovered it? I felt tears prick my eyes, but I pushed through. Betrayed. Stupid. Like I'd wasted 7 years of my life on someone who saw me as an obstacle instead of a partner. But mostly, I felt terrified for my daughter. Because if Tyler could lie to me so completely, what else was he capable of? Patricia nodded and pulled up more documents. Mrs. Harper, I'm showing you Exhibit 47. Do you know what this is? I looked at the screen. It was an email exchange between Tyler and someone named Carlos Mendez. My lawyer showed it to me last week. It's an email between Tyler and a man who helps people disappear. False identities, offshore accounts, everything. The jury leaned forward. Tyler was planning to leave the country, to take all the money he'd hidden and vanish to Costa Rica with Monica and their baby. He was going to make it impossible for me to ever find him or collect child support. He was going to abandon our daughter completely. I heard gasps from the gallery. Even the judge looked shocked. How did you react when you learned this? Patricia asked softly. I realized that the man I married never existed, I said, my voice breaking. The Tyler I loved, the father I thought Ivy had, he was a fantasy. The real Tyler is someone who spent years planning how to destroy me financially and emotionally, and then disappear so I couldn't fight back. He was willing to abandon his own child to do it. Patricia let that statement hang in the air. No further questions, Your Honor. Richard stood for cross-examination, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. He knew his client was sinking, and there was nothing he could do. Mrs. Harper, he began carefully, isn't it true that you received $50 million during your marriage, making you far wealthier than my client? Yes, I received an inheritance after I discovered my husband's affair and fraud. But the inheritance was received while you were still legally married, correct? Yes, but... So technically, it could be considered a marital asset that should be shared? Patricia stood immediately. Objection. Illinois law is clear that inheritances are separate property. Sustained, the judge said, giving Richard a warning look. Richard tried a different angle. Mrs. Harper, my client made mistakes. He admits that. But don't you think you're being vindictive by trying to ensure he gets nothing from this divorce? After all, he helped build the life that allowed you to be home when that inheritance call came. I looked at Richard, then at Tyler, then back at the jury. Vindictive would be doing to him what he planned to do to me? I said quietly. Hiding money, forging signatures, planning to disappear so he could avoid his responsibilities. I'm not doing any of that. I'm simply asking that the truth be known and that justice be served. Tyler didn't build our life. I built it while supporting his career. And the inheritance has nothing to do with him. It's mine because my uncle wanted me to have it, not because Tyler allowed me to be home that day. Richard flinched. He tried a few more questions, but each one made Tyler look worse. Finally, he sat down, defeated. "Redirect, Ms. Chen?" the judge asked. Patricia stood. "Just one question, Your Honor. Mrs. Harper, if your husband had been honest with you, if he'd come to you 2 years ago and said he wanted a divorce, what would you have done?" I thought about that. I would have been heartbroken, but I would have handled it with dignity. We would have divided our assets fairly, arranged custody of Ivy, and moved on with our lives. I never would have fought him for wanting to be happy, even if it wasn't with me. And now? Now I know he never gave me that choice. He chose to lie, to cheat, to steal, and to plan a future where I was left with nothing. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Patricia smiled. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand on shaking legs. As I walked past Tyler's table, he finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or anger or fear. I didn't care which. He was a stranger to me now. The prosecution rested. Richard called Tyler to the stand in a last-ditch attempt to save him, but it backfired spectacularly. Patricia's cross-examination was brutal. "Mr. Harper, did you or did you not forge your wife's signature on a home equity line of credit?" Tyler hesitated. The mortgage was in both our names. I thought I had the right. That's not what I asked. Did you sign her name without her knowledge or consent? Yes, and did you hide the money you withdrew in offshore accounts? I was protecting our assets. From your wife? The woman you were married to? Tyler's lawyer tried to object, but the judge overruled him. "Mr. Harper," Patricia continued, "did you or did you not contact Carlos Mendez about obtaining false identification documents and establishing residence in Costa Rica?" Tyler's face went pale. "I was exploring options. Options to flee the country and avoid your legal and financial obligations to your wife and daughter. No, I wasn't. I was just..." He was floundering, and everyone could see it. Patricia produced email after email, each one more damning than the last. Tyler trying to hide money. Tyler researching how to disappear. Tyler telling Monica they'd be set for life once he got what he was owed from the divorce. By the time Patricia finished, Tyler looked like he'd been through a war. The jury wouldn't even look at him. Closing arguments came the next day. Richard tried his best, painting Tyler as a flawed man who'd made mistakes but deserved compassion. Patricia eviscerated that narrative. "This isn't about mistakes," she told the jury. "Mistakes are accidents. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. What Tyler Harper did was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. He spent 2 years lying to his wife. He forged her signature to steal from her. He planned to abandon his daughter and flee the country with money he'd hidden from the woman who'd sacrificed everything to support him. And when she inherited money that had nothing to do with him, money from her own family, he demanded millions of it. That's not a mistake. That's who he is." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they came back, the foreman read the verdict. Tyler would receive nothing from my inheritance. The marital assets would be split, but he'd have to pay back the money he'd stolen and hidden, with interest. I got full custody of Ivy. He got supervised visitation 2 hours every other Saturday. And the judge added one more thing, looking directly at Tyler. "Mr. Harper, I'm referring your case to the state attorney for criminal prosecution of fraud. What you did wasn't just morally wrong. It was illegal. You'll be hearing from them soon." Tyler's face crumpled. Richard put a hand on his shoulder, but Tyler shook it off. I walked out of that courtroom with Patricia beside me and my parents waiting in the hall with Ivy. My daughter ran to me, and I picked her up, holding her tight. "Did you win, Mommy?" she asked. I kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. We won." 3 years have passed since that courtroom victory, and I barely recognize the woman I used to be. I'm sitting in my home office right now, looking out at Lake Michigan from my house in Evanston. It's a beautiful place. Not mansion huge, but perfect for Ivy and me. 4 bedrooms, a backyard where she plays for hours, and enough space that we never feel crowded. I bought it 6 months after the divorce was finalized, paid in cash, and every morning I wake up grateful that these walls hold only peace now, no lies. The inheritance changed my life in ways I never expected, not because of the money itself, but because it gave me choices. Freedom. The ability to build the life I actually wanted instead of the one I'd been settling for. I went back to school immediately after the trial ended. Finished my graduate degree in psychology, the one I'd abandoned to support Tyler's dreams. Turns out, I had dreams too. I just needed to remember them. Now I work as a trauma counselor specializing in helping women recover from financial abuse and marital betrayal. I split my time between a private practice and volunteer work with a nonprofit that helps women leave situations where their partners control all the money. Every woman I help, I see pieces of myself. The confusion, the self-blame, the fear of starting over. And I tell them what I learned, that surviving betrayal doesn't make you weak. Fighting back makes you strong. Ivy is 6 now, thriving in 1st grade. She's smart, funny, resilient in ways that break my heart and make me proud at the same time. She's adjusted better than I feared. Children are adaptable like that, especially when they're removed from chaos and given stability. Tyler sees her twice a month, supervised visits that he's late to more often than not. Last month he missed 3 in a row, something about work obligations. Ivy barely noticed. She asked about him once, casually, the way she might ask about a distant relative. "Is Daddy coming this weekend?" When I said no, she shrugged and went back to her coloring book. It shouldn't make me sad, but sometimes it does. Not for me. I stopped mourning Tyler years ago. But for her. She deserved a father who showed up, who loved her unconditionally, who put her first. Instead, she got Tyler. But she also got me, and my parents, and a whole community of people who love her fiercely. Maybe that's enough. Tyler's life imploded exactly the way Patricia predicted. The criminal fraud charges were filed 3 months after the divorce was finalized. He took a plea deal to avoid jail time, 5 years probation, community service, and he had to pay back every dollar he'd stolen from me, plus penalties. The restitution payments come automatically from his paycheck every month. I deposited the first few checks, then started donating them to organizations that help women escape financial abuse. It felt right, turning his theft into something that could help others. His real estate career never recovered. The scandal destroyed his reputation. No one wants to work with a realtor who committed fraud against his own wife. He lost the brokerage within a year, had to sell it for a fraction of what it was worth just to pay legal fees. Last I heard, he's working as a sales associate at some corporate real estate office, making a basic salary. Nothing close to what he used to earn. I don't take pleasure in his downfall exactly. But I don't feel sorry for him either. He made his choices. He chose to lie, to steal, to plan my destruction. The consequences were his own doing. Monica had her baby, a boy, 3 weeks after I caught them. Tyler never went to see him in the hospital, never signed the birth certificate. She tried to file for child support, but Tyler's lawyer argued he couldn't afford it after the restitution payments to me. The case is still ongoing, from what I understand. She moved back to Minnesota shortly after the baby was born, her real estate career in Chicago completely destroyed by the scandal. I found out through mutual acquaintances that she tried to rebuild her life there, but the story followed her. Small business community, everyone knows everyone. She ended up leaving real estate entirely, working in some retail management position now. Single mother raising a son who'll grow up knowing his father wanted nothing to do with him. Sometimes I think about reaching out to her. Not to be friends. That bridge is burned beyond repair. But to tell her I understand what it's like to be destroyed by Tyler Harper, to have him make you believe you were special, that you were building something together, only to discover you were just another piece in his game. But I never do. Some wounds are too deep for that kind of closure. The inheritance money is invested now, safely and wisely. I set up a trust for Ivy that she'll inherit when she turns 25, enough to give her every opportunity in life without spoiling her. The rest I've been using to build something meaningful. I started a foundation last year that provides emergency financial assistance to women leaving abusive relationships. Rent deposits, legal fees, childcare costs, the practical things that keep women trapped because they can't afford to leave. Every woman we help, I think about who I might have been if I hadn't gotten that inheritance. If I'd caught Tyler's affair as a broke stay-at-home mom with no resources and no options. Would I have been able to fight back? Or would I have been forced to accept whatever crumbs he offered just to survive? The inheritance didn't just save me, it gave me the power to save myself. And now I'm trying to give that power to others. I started dating again about a year ago. Nothing serious, just testing the waters of trusting someone new. It's harder than I expected. Every time a man shows interest, I find myself looking for red flags, waiting for the lies to start. My therapist says it's normal, that betrayal trauma takes years to fully heal. I'm working on it, taking it slow, remembering that not everyone is Tyler. Ivy asked me last month if I'll ever get married again. We were having breakfast before school, and it came out of nowhere the way kids' questions do. Maybe someday, I told her honestly, if I meet someone kind and honest who makes me happy. But right now, I'm pretty happy just being your mom. She smiled at that, syrup on her chin. Me too. And that's the truth I've learned through all of this. Happiness doesn't come from having a partner or a perfect life or even $50 million. It comes from being free. Free from lies, from manipulation, from someone who sees you as less than you are. Tyler tried to destroy me. He planned it methodically, executed it carefully, and would have succeeded if timing hadn't intervened, but even without the inheritance, I think I would have survived. Maybe not as comfortably, maybe not as quickly, but I would have found my way back to myself eventually, because that's what survivors do. The inheritance just made the journey faster and the ending sweeter. I see women sometimes, at the grocery store or the park, and I wonder about their stories. The ones with tight smiles and sad eyes, checking their phones nervously, apologizing too much. I wonder if they're living the lie I lived, if they'll get their wake-up call like I did, or if they'll stay trapped in marriages that are slowly killing them. I want to tell them that there's another side to this pain, that betrayal doesn't have to be your ending. It can be your beginning. That the day everything falls apart might actually be the day your real life starts. But I know they have to find that out for themselves, the way I did. On the anniversary of the day I caught Tyler, I do something I've done every year since. I take Ivy out for ice cream at her favorite place, and we talk about what we're grateful for. She always says things like my friends and chocolate chip cookies, and when you read me stories at night, the simple, beautiful things that matter to kids. This year, when she asked what I was grateful for, I surprised myself with my answer. I'm grateful for the truth, I said, even when it hurt. She didn't fully understand, but she nodded like it made sense. Someday when she's older, I'll tell her the whole story. Not to poison her against her father, but to teach her that people show you who they are through their actions. That trust is precious and shouldn't be given to those who haven't earned it. That love without honesty isn't really love at all. And I'll tell her that being hurt doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. What you do next, how you rebuild, how you choose to move forward, that's what defines you. I chose to fight, to expose the truth, to take back my power and build a life that's authentically mine. Every day I wake up in this beautiful house, doing work I love, raising a daughter who's happy and secure, I remember that this life almost didn't happen. Tyler almost took it from me, but he didn't. And that's everything. So if you're listening to this story from somewhere out there, maybe because something in it sounded familiar, maybe because you're living your own version of it right now, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think. The betrayal you're facing, the lies you've discovered, the trust that's been shattered, none of it defines your worth. What defines you is what you do next. For me, it was the day I became $50 million richer and discovered my husband having an affair in the same breath. That day could have destroyed me. Instead, it saved me. Because I finally saw clearly who he was and who I needed to be. And 3 years later, I wouldn't change a single thing. Well, maybe one thing. I wish I'd known sooner. I wish I'd trusted my instincts when they whispered that something was wrong. I wish I'd demanded honesty instead of accepting comfortable lies. But regret doesn't change the past, it only clouds the future. So I'm choosing to be grateful instead, for the inheritance that gave me options, for the lawyers who fought for me, for my parents who held me when I fell apart, for my daughter who gave me a reason to be strong, and even, in a strange way, for Tyler, because his betrayal taught me exactly what I never want in my life again. I'm Naomi. I survived the worst betrayal I could imagine. And not only did I survive it, I built something beautiful from the ashes. That's my story. That's my truth. And if you've been following along from the beginning, I want to know where you are in this world. Drop a comment telling me what city you're listening from. It means something to know these stories reach people everywhere, that maybe something I shared helped you feel less alone. And if you don't want to miss stories like this, real experiences from real people navigating the complicated, messy, beautiful chaos of life, make sure you're subscribed. Because we all have stories that deserve to be heard. And sometimes, the ones that hurt the most end up meaning the most. Thank you for listening to mine.